Hello, in this video, we're going to be diving into the AI landscape in 2026. This is the Future Proof Podcast. What does the AI landscape look like in 2026? Well, let's this is a workshop I'm going to be presenting to healthcare professionals and education professionals, and it's focused on bringing them up to speed on what is going on and where things are going. So, one of the first things I'll say is that there's going to be a shift from chatbots to agents. A lot more. You're going to be hearing people talk about agentic AI. What that means is that we're moving from a time when you needed to prompt an AI to tell you things to actually making the AI do the things that, for example, I want to build a website. You can now use AI to do that. I want to build a slide deck built in such and such a way. You can now do that. Again, Claude is very good at some of those slide decks, but other companies do that as well. So there's an AI shift happening right now before our eyes, and you want to make sure you pay attention to that. We're offering online webinars at least once a month. The next one is on May 9th, and it's happening at 11 a.m. Eastern in the US. We want to make sure anybody can join in, but we want to make sure that people are following the updates with AI. We also have a newsletter that is coming out on AI, and you can follow our work there as well. So, number one, there's a shift from chatbots to agents. Number two, we need to understand what these models are, what are tokens, and what are benchmarks when it comes to AI basics. Number three, what are the dominant players in the AI space right now? Number four, who are the global leaders outside of the dominant ones in the US? Number five, what are the benchmarks and what do they even mean? All these benchmarks that are talked about with AI models. And so those are five key things we can talk about, and then there's a lot more that we'll be discussing in the next episode. So let's start from the great AI shift, why 2026 is an inflection point for professionals in every field. So if you look at the amount of CapEx they talk about, or the amount of just money going into building out AI data centers and building and training AI models, you realize that there's a lot of change that is happening, massive change. And what you need to keep in mind is that all this investment in this infrastructure, it means that the way work is going to be done is going to be affected because there's a build out happening for what the future of work looks like. We know that there's over 1 billion people probably using AI in one form or the other. 72% of organizations are using AI in more than one function. 40% enterprise workflows are done with AI agents. Some people predict by the end of 2026. There are several, FDA-cleared AI medical devices, and then about 60% of teachers in the K-12 space say that they use AI weekly. I would say that the AI space is weird when it comes to education because there's not clear guardrails for many people, but that's another topic for another day. Let's talk about where things have come from and where they're going, from generative AI to agentic AI. So from about 2022 to 2025, that was the era of generative AI. And before 2022, research in AI was happening, by the way, but most of us didn't have a clue of what was going on, right? It was a very specialized field, and it's still very specialized. But there's a lot of interdisciplinary things going on now. So there was generative AI from about 2023 to 2025. And then in 2025, we started getting agentic AI systems around March. And one of the first ones was called Manus AI. And now agentic AI systems are just growing. And Claude Code is now here. And there's a lot of things with agentic AI systems. So in generative AI, you ask and it answers. In agentic AI, you set a goal and it executes. In generative AI, it's passive. It waits for prompts. In agentic AI systems, you can train it and give it tools, and therefore it can be active and it can plan and it can act autonomously. But you want to be careful when you do that, right? Because sometimes they could keep going and then you deplete all your credits if it's not put in the right if you don't put the right guardrails. In generative AI, it was a read-only, no system access. With agentic AI, you can use tools. And what it means is that when my Claude was building out some projects, my Claude system had to use different tools to satisfy the goals. It might need to build a PowerPoint slide deck with certain tools, build an Excel slide deck with other tools. When I'm building a website with Replit, it sometimes has to call different tools, database, back-end development. The agentic AI system can call tools, or they can use APIs. And these are things that we'll discuss more formally in our AI course. But the idea is that agentic AI systems can do things on your behalf. It can buy a ticket for you. It can build your website. It can build you a slide deck. It can build you a business model with multiple things completed in one prompt, right? You could give Replit one prompt. You get a marketing plan, a business plan, a website, a flyer, a go-to-market strategy all at once. That's pretty cool. Generative AI is one prompt at a time. Agentic AI, you can have multi-step. You can kind of throw 25 different things to your agentic AI system and come back and see it deliver the deliverables. Generative AI is like an answering machine. Agentic AI is like a self-directed digital teammate. Generative AI examples are ChatGPT, Claude, and Gemini. And the thing is, they are now also moving into that agentic AI space. However, there are some AI models that are just generative AI. But for agentic AI, some of the ones that are specialized in agentic AI are ones like Replit, and then Claude Code can be used for coding software, building out software. So that's a little bit of generative AI versus agentic AI. Why does this matter? Well, so here's the thing. When you get into AI, you have to decide what route you want to go. Do you want to look at it from a healthcare perspective, education perspective? What niche are you trying to go down to? Business perspective, right? We're going to run an in-person workshop in Atlanta, Georgia in June, God willing. So you could join us there where we talk about AI. We're also going to do one in Chicago, and we're going to do one in Houston. But the goal is we want to make sure that you're learning and using the tools in your specific niche. So let us know if what you want to do with some of these AI tools, and we can talk more. So what is an AI model? Let's talk a little bit about AI fundamentals. An AI model is pretty much a sophisticated pattern recognition machine that is trained on a massive amount of data, and it has been trained on so much data that it has now learned, quote unquote, how to predict the next word in a series. It reads billions of documents. It predicts helpful responses. It does not understand, and it also sometimes can hallucinate. So now we need to talk about how to solve the hallucination problem, and I'll talk about that next. So hallucination is where the AI will say something, and it will say it on the basis of, here's this fact, and it will say it with so much confidence, even though the thing is not true. And there's reasons why hallucinations happen. We can have a whole workshop on that, have some experts talk about that. But the thing to note is that you can reduce hallucinations. How do you reduce hallucinations? The way you reduce hallucinations, I would say, is number one, you need to use something called RAG, Retrieval Augmented Generation. We need RAG. RAG is where you put specific documents into an AI project, and then when you prompt the AI to do certain things, it's pulling from what you've given it. That's RAG. That's number one. Number two, you also use agentic AI and deep research. So if you use deep research, agentic AI, and RAG, your hallucination drops drastically, because agentic AI systems are such that the AI now has the ability to go on the internet and search the websites related to the thing you're doing research on. So it doesn't need to hallucinate as much, right? There's a fourth reason why we're dropping hallucinations, and that's probably because the AI systems are being trained to learn how to just say, I don't know better, right? Or at least say, I'm not sure of this. In the past, the AI system felt like it had to always give you an answer. Now, when you use agentic AI systems, when you use RAG, when you use, like your own documents with RAG, with agentic AI systems, with deep research, this is part of how we can reduce hallucinations. So that is part of what we need to know about AI models, and we'll press on from there. So what are some other key terms that you need to know about AI? Well, let me end with these 8 terms, and then we're going to continue our journey of really understanding how AI works. I will say this quickly. What are the big AI models in the US? So everybody needs to be aware of Anthropic Claude, Google Gemini, OpenAI ChatGPT, even though that's not my main one. My main one is Claude. But you need to know who they are. Those are the big 3, right? There's Grok. I guess you can call that the 4th one in there. Perplexity is a great one for research. Those are some of the big names in the AI space. Globally, there's one called Mistral, which is in a French company, and then Google DeepMind, by the way, which does a lot of the work you hear about with Gemini and gave us things like the transformer architecture. The name ChatGPT, that T stands for transformer, and that's something we'll be discussing later on. But it's interesting that that in Google, DeepMind is in London, Mistral is in France. Those are two models that are, sort of international. Now, there are models out of China, lots of models. We're not going to go into all of them here. But the point is, you need to know the main ones that are sort of at the cutting edge right now, which is Anthropic Claude, Google Gemini, and OpenAI ChatGPT, and then XAI, which is trying to get in the race, to move into those ranks as well. Each AI model, a lot of the ones we have now are very good at certain things, and sometimes they're not as good in other things. Some might be good at doing sort of like videos or graphic design, and others might be better for professional work, like Claude. So here are 8 terms I want to leave us with. We have LLM, which is large language model, right? That's the names of these companies I just mentioned. Those are LLMs. A context window. A context window is how much text AI sees at once. Claude has a 1 million token context, which is about 750,000 words, 1,500 pages. Open source means that the model weights are freely downloadable and modifiable and deployable on your own server. So there's something called open source and closed. The ones I mentioned earlier were all mostly closed, and then there's open source. What does that mean? You can take an AI model and modify it to fit your need for what you need done. And that is something we can discuss more about how to take an AI model and make it work for you. So we have a service called this AI consulting service where we help you build out a local LLM in your own home or office so that when you type something on the AI, it doesn't go to the overall internet. It stops on your computer in your own server. That is something we can discuss also later on. We talked about hallucinations, about AI being confident but producing wrong information. Now, we've talked about the context window, but now there's the tokens. So the building blocks of AI use tokens. About 3/4 word per token. 1 page is about 500 tokens. AI pricing, there's all this pricing you will see about tokens and price points and how much per prompt and all of that. Tokens are very important, and there's a word I call token economics. It is sometimes better to use a generative AI tool to get information, which you give to an agentic AI system to basically help you do things. If you give it to the agentic AI system, it might use some of your credits because most of these agentic AI systems are not free. They take a lot of credits to work. So you want to use a generative AI tool and then move it over to an agentic AI tool. I call this part of the beginning of something called token economics, which is knowing how to make the most of the tokens you have. The 6th term we want to look at briefly before we wrap up today is called parameters. Parameters are the internal settings that are learned during training. The more parameters in general, the more nuanced reasoning potentially, I would say. The frontier models have sometimes 100 billion parameters to 1 trillion parameters, right? And there's bigger parameters now, and we're going to see what happens. So parameters are a very important discussion around AI. What are the parameters? Now, I used to joke that if you send me a prompt response from an AI you used, right? Some people would send me a prompt and I would read it and I would sometimes I would look at it and go, you got this from, and I'll call the name of the AI model and they'll be like, yeah. And I'm like, please don't do that, right? Because the reason I tell them that is some AI models are just not as good, not at all. And so you need to know, right? But the ones I mentioned earlier, again, are solid. I think Claude is the best. But, there's just some that if you want to be serious with AI, you probably should not be using. The 7th term is fine tuning. That is when you take an existing model and you help it specialize on data. Let's say I want to train an AI model to be good at automating a process where a ticket is submitted and it needs to be put into like let's say you have a parking garage and people come and they pay to get in and they leave and they get this ticket that says they've paid or whatever, and then the parking ramp gets a copy of the receipt, but it has to be put in order of dates or whatever. You can build a small language model. You could build a model. You could fine tune it to work on automating and arranging tickets and receipts at a parking ramp. I'm just giving an example. You can tailor it down to a narrow case, down to a parking garage scenario. You can do a narrow case for this, a narrow case for that. That is actually part of the best case use, or the best use case of AI, is in narrow opportunities. Now, there are people who are trying to move towards this idea of artificial general intelligence, where the AI system can do everything a human being can do and better, quote unquote. And I think we really have to think through what we're trying to do and accomplish with that, because we have not actually helped humans reach their full potential, which if everybody was getting a quality education, like, we would be doing pretty good, right? But I think some days I say, I'm concerned that we're not giving people a chance to reach their full potential. And so I say all that to say the best use case for AI, again, I think, is narrow AI cases. Get the AI to be good at the one thing it needs to be doing. And if you have a mixture of experts, that's fine. If different AI models have to do different things, that's fine. But building out just the one model that can become this artificial general intelligence, that's a debate topic we need to have at some point. The last term for today is multimodal. This is when AI can process text, images, audio, video together in a single model. We have that with GPT, we have that with Gemini, they're multimodal. So those are 8 terms that you must know if you want to be very good at AI. In the next episode, we're going to dive into more discussions about these AI companies and what was the vision. We've talked about open source and closed source, and we'll talk more about that also in the next one. So here's what I want to leave you with. Think about your general workflow every day. What are some things that you can leverage AI to build into your workflow? How can it help? And maybe there's a dashboard you need to build that can support you better. Whatever the case, let me leave you with one AI tool, or one tool, I guess I call it an AI tool, called WhisperFlow, which allows you to be able to take voice, you speak into the WhisperFlow app, and it can type in what you're saying into any interface. So if you could go to a Google Doc, you could just start talking, and then it just puts what you've said right on the document. You could write a whole book in less than a day, just if you want to speak it, right? So find where you have things going on that AI could help supplement, and then think of other systems you can build where AI is at the core, and then you build on top of that. So those are some things to chew on. WhisperFlow, Replit, Claude. These are some of the tools that I talk about in my first newsletter, and you could download the newsletter and let us know if you have any questions, thoughts, comments, objections. Look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Take care, and we'll do some lab sessions, I promise, where we actually have a camera showing on the screen and we're working and going through different things with AI. But you let us know, are there certain aspects of AI you have questions on? Let us know in the chats, and we'll talk to you soon, or in the comment section, sorry. And we'll talk to you soon. Feel free to like, share, and subscribe. Take care, and have a blessed day.